The harvest is plentiful, the labours are few, therefore pray to the Lord of the harvest. How can we do that best?
That's a good question. I remember when I was a kid growing up in church, and I grew up in a denomination that was strong in missions, and we had corporate prayer meetings. I remember as a 6th grader, 5th grader, 4th grader, going to these prayer meetings and listening, even trying to participate from time to time, but listening to them pray. And at least in my memory, it seems like we focused most of the time on missions, on praying for the missionaries that were out there and so forth. But one of the things that I remember, and I even remember a dear old saint who almost always had this as a part of her prayer, was to, she would always pray that the young people of our church would be called into missions or into full-time, Christian work, and that was a powerful thing. And I try to think back. My memory isn't good, but I know there were a number of people from that would have been a little older than me or my age that ended up in, besides myself, ended up in full-time Christian work. Very powerful. I remember a church I spoke at early on when I was with the magazine and started to get some speaking opportunities. And I spoke at this Presbyterian church that had been around a couple hundred years, I think, in the Albany, New York area. And the pastor of this church showed me a wall, and they had hundreds of names on that wall, and they were all people that had come out of that church and gone into, being pastors or missionaries elsewhere. And they had a strong emphasis on praying for them regularly, but also praying that God would keep using them as a sending church. And I think that's one of the things that in our Western culture in many churches has been lost, where I don't hear that happen. Unless I ask when I'm leading a prayer meeting at some church that I'm ministering in and have a time where we actually pray for that, it doesn't come up naturally anymore. And that is a sad thing, because that is, one of the primary things in Scripture where Jesus or God comments about something specific to pray for. The other interesting thing about that passage is he said that to his disciples at a time when he was sending them out 2 by 2 into the villages. So they were going out in ministry, and he comments to them, well, we need more of this. We need to, people are hurting out there. People want to know the Lord and want to come to God. They're ready, but there aren't people there to tell them. And so I think that's a primary thing. In this day and age where communication in some ways is tougher, but in a lot of ways it's easier. There's so many potential things that you can use to reach people. Man, we need to lift that verse up again and get people praying that, because there's so many things that people, even if they can't get overseas or get to another culture, there are things that you can do right from your computer that will minister to people in that. And so let's start praying that again.
Right.